Once upon a time. Those words always stir up vivid images, don't they? A good once upon a time story, although fiction in nature, always teach a lesson. Now, Jesus understood the power of stories and often taught by using what are called parables. Matthew chapter 13 records 7 parables Jesus told. Look at Matthew chapter 13, verse 1 and 2. It says, that same day Jesus went out of the house, probably the house he was staying in Capernaum, and sat by the lake. That's for geographic purposes, that's the Sea of Galilee. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it while all the people stood on the shore. Now, a parable has been defined as an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. And that's probably as pithy and as good a definition as there is for a parable. A parable is a word picture of life that is clear to the listeners. When Jesus talks about a farmer sowing seed, they all understood and had that picture in their minds. It's such a realistic picture Jesus paints here, it could have actually happened. Now, the trouble we often have with parables is we try to dissect and analyze too much. Trying to determine what each item in a parable means is actually dangerous work, because at some point the comparisons will break down and not make any sense. And although Jesus was the master storyteller, even his parables, if examined with too much detail, will not make sense. So generally, it's best not to overanalyze the stories, but to simply accept them at face value and understand their point without worrying about the details. Now, the exception to that, of course, is when Jesus gives his own interpretation of the parable. That way, we know we are on solid ground and not just guessing. The purpose of Jesus' once upon a time parables is to teach us something about God. As such, I don't want to hurry too fast through this text, so I'll look at one parable today and the rest of the parables from Matthew 13 next Sunday. And as we look at these parables, I think you'll see why I'm going to focus on only one today and 6 next Sunday. Since parables are an earthly story with a heavenly meaning, sometimes the meaning is hidden and the story contains secrets. Skip down and follow along as I read Matthew chapter 13, verses 10 through 17. The disciples came to him and asked, "Why do you speak to the people in parables?" He replied, "The knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. Whoever has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has, will be taken from him. This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I will heal them. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For I tell you the truth, many prophets and righteous men long to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it." Now, some believe the words of these verses I just read actually belong at the end of the chapter, because the disciples are coming up to Jesus in the text and asking him a question about his teaching. And chances are they would not have interrupted Jesus in the middle of his teaching, but will wait until after they got him alone. So, but Matthew includes it here in the middle to better tie the parable to the sower with the explanation about what that parable means. I put it first in my sermon to talk about the purpose of parables before we actually look at the parable. Notice it wasn't the crowd who was hearing the message for the first time with the question, but those who understood a little about what was going on. You've heard the old cliche, haven't you? A little knowledge is dangerous. Well, the disciples knew a little about what Jesus was up to and could not understand why he was now just telling stories instead of slamming the Pharisees like he did back in the last chapter. And I would say they were upset, but upset may be too strong a word to use here. Let's just say they were concerned because Jesus was teaching differently than he used to teach. Maybe they considered parables fluff or shallow entertainment or something for the children instead of deep theological exposition. They wanted more direct attacks on the Pharisees instead of this seemingly unimportant gibberish about farming methods. It's a tension we still face in church today. There are those who only want a word-by-word exegesis of Scripture and don't understand the importance of what may be considered entertainment, like VBS or Family Fun Night or any kind of programming or materials other than pure Bible study. But the hardest part of verses 10 through 17 is Jesus' insistence he is hiding the secrets of the kingdom by speaking in the parables. So isn't hiding secrets inconsistent and maybe even a little mean? After all, we want everyone to hear the gospel, so why is Jesus being so secretive? What we need to understand is Jesus is not trying to hide the truth from the crowd. In fact, the parables spell out exactly what the kingdom of heaven is like. But the truth of the parables can only be understood when the one who hears understands who Jesus is. Let me illustrate this in a negative fashion. Remember the late 60s TV show Laugh-In? Now, as a boy of about 14 or 15, I loved that show. It was very hip, very fast-moving, and full of corny jokes. And although I recognized some of the sexual references in the show, I was very naive and missed most of the dirty stuff. But I remember, as an adult, watching a 25th anniversary special of the show and being shocked. The show was just full of innuendo and filth. I don't know which was worse, the fact that the show got away with that stuff, or the fact that as a preacher I now know what those hidden messages were. You see, stories always stick with the student longer than dry, dull facts. It is easier for us to remember stories about Civil War battles than to remember when they were fought. Jesus taught deep truth to the crowd, who could probably not understand it yet. But the parables stuck with them. And later, after they understood who Jesus was, they remember the stories and say, oh, now I get it. That's what he meant. Until then, the parables are kind of like a secret. So this first parable is about sowing. Look at verses 3 through 9, Matthew 13. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plant. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. He who has ears, let him hear. Now the ground where Jesus lived is full of rocks, and the farmer could spend most of his time trying to get rid of the rocks in his field instead of planting seed. Often there'd be only a thin layer of dirt covering a huge sheet of limestone. Furthermore, you could not run down to Walmart and buy a product that would get rid of the weeds. And pulling it out by hand was not only time-consuming, but back-breaking as well. So since most of the farms were small, and the farmers were so poor they could not afford to buy much equipment or hire many laborers to do some of the work, they simply sowed the seed in whatever ground they had. In addition, Most fields were laid out in long strips with a path between the rows so people could walk through. And the farmers knew the importance of resting fields, so there would also be a patch of land next to the planted field that had grown wild with weeds and thorns. A farmer would fill his bag with the seed he was planting and walk down the row that he had prepared and toss the seed along the way. So naturally, the result was some of the seed either fell or was blown into parts of the field less receptive. This parable always reminds me of my first and last attempt to plant a garden. There was a small 3-foot by 3-foot space that was already tilled and often used for flowers next to the side door at the parsonage in Pomeroy, Ohio. So I decided that was a good place for me to plant some sweet corn and watermelon. Now, growing up, Mom always had a garden, and she spent every day in that garden. I was either too busy or too lazy to tend to the garden every day, although I did manage to water it maybe once a week. So if you had farmed or raised a garden, you know what happened next, right? The weeds grew higher than the sweet corn, and I never did see any watermelon. I think I ended up with 2 or 3 very small ears of corn. I learned a great deal about and respect for the hard work of farmers that summer, but I wasn't able to grow a crop. What stands out in this parable is how the sower sows. The seed falls into every type of soil there is. Along with the good soil, the seed is sown on the soil that's nothing but packed, dry ground. The soil full of rocks, kind of like our land here, isn't it? Up on the hill. If you dig very deep, you come to all kinds of rocks here in this hill. And the soil full of weeds and thorns. Now, from our perspective, sowing everywhere like that seems to be a waste of time and resources and money. Wouldn't it be better to focus on just the good soil? Well, in actual farming, that may be true. But it's not how we are to spread the seed of the gospel. This is where the parable breaks down a little bit. Think for a moment about what was written in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 9. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. See, in our petty little minds, it makes no sense to waste our time with the bad soil, with the soil we don't like. However, God so loves the whole world, and he wants to give everyone an opportunity to hear and respond to the gospel. In the classic novel To Kill a Mockingbird, the little girl Scout is confused. She doesn't understand why her church supports a missionary to Africa and even sends them boxes of clothes to give to the natives, but they will not allow a black person to attend their church. Now, maybe we aren't overly racist like that, but isn't it odd how we pick and choose who we want to attend church with us? And they usually look and act a lot like us. In one church I served, their idea of evangelism was this. And I actually had one of the leaders tell me this almost word for word. He said, let's go after members of area Christian churches and get them to transfer their membership here. If we did, we won't have to go through the long process of teaching them, and they already know how we do things here. Now, there's nothing wrong with those who transfer their membership, and there's nothing wrong with reaching out to those who are like us. But let's not forget to also scatter our seed to those who are not like us. It doesn't matter if we think they'll respond or not. And it doesn't matter if they're completely different and foreign to us. It doesn't even matter if their politics are different. God still loves them as well. And our job is just to sow. God will give the increase. Finally, the point of this parable is the seeds. Or more specifically, how the seeds grow. Look at Jesus' interpretation of his parable in Matthew chapter 13, beginning at verse 18. Listen to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears a message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The one who received the seed that fell on rocky places is the man who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since he has no root, he lasts only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, he quickly falls away. The one who received the seed that fell among the thorns is the man who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. But the one who received the seed that fell on good soil is the man who hears the word and understands it. He produces a crop yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Now notice here in these words what Jesus does not say. He does not blame the farmer because the seed did not grow. Instead, he puts the blame on the willingness of the ground to accept the seed. In other words, it's not our decision as those who sow the seed to decide who will get the seed. Because when we do that, we will only pick those that we think have a good chance of responding. Our job, you see, is simple. Go into all the world and preach the gospel. Then we let God worry about the results. However, there's still a lesson here about preparing the field. The farmer does not make the seed grow. It grows on its own. The farmer's job is only to plant the seed. And if the ground is not ready, to take a little time to prepare the soil. You see, that's what I failed to do when I planted my garden, wasn't it? I didn't take out the weeds, didn't keep it, work the field. I mentioned earlier, you can analyze the parable too far, and the comparison will break down. And it happens also in this parable. A farmer will do everything he can to make his soil good, right? But if he cannot fix it, and it will not produce a crop, he will either sell the land or change its use and no longer plant seed there. This is where it breaks down, because as Christians, sowing the seeds of the gospel, we keep right on sowing, even if no one is responding. That's what Noah did all those years when he was preaching to repent. No one responded, but he kept doing it. Sure, we can try to remove the rocks, we can till the soil, we can pull the weeds, but the day to sow is now, not later, when everything is ready. Because everything will never be ready. There are 4 types of soil in this parable, and we need to be aware of them. We need to be aware of them, not to avoid them, but to understand why sometimes our efforts don't produce what we want. In this parable, Jesus does not demand the one who sows to be successful, only to be faithful. Let me say that again. Jesus does not demand that we are successful in our works, but faithful in our works. The first type of soil is the hardened and packed down soil along the path. They're the ones who simply refuse to understand it. You've all seen those people. They have absolutely no concern about the things of God. To them, it's all irrelevant, unimportant, and unworthy of their time. They are proud and arrogant, thinking they can handle everything themselves. Karl Marx summed up their opinion when he called Christianity the opiate of the people. But we are not to ignore them when we sow. We're still to sow them. It is hard to penetrate such hard ground. Did you know early pioneers passed by Illinois because the prairie land was so hard and impossible to till? Conventional plows would break and seeds could not be sown until John Deere developed a new type of plow that broke the soil. And today, Illinois has some of the richest soil in the nation, producing huge crops every year. When we come across hard soil, let's not give up and move on. let's continue to sow seeds. And while we sow, let us look for the right plat to till the ground. The second soil in the parable was full of rocks. The seeds grew fast but quickly faded away when the troubles of this world came along. You see, it's always easier to be a Christian when everything is going well. The real test comes when bad things happen. And here's something we don't always want to hear. Bad things will happen. And we still sow our seeds to that soil. The third type of soil is full of weeds and thorns. And those weeds and thorns will choke a seed and not allow it to grow. How do weeds and thorns grow? When the ground, the soil is left unattended. A farmer has to constantly worry about getting rid of the weeds and removing the rocks. If left alone, the weeds and rocks will win. That's why we need fellowship. That's why we need each other. Our faith cannot grow by itself. We need each other. Sowing is not a one-time event, but a lifestyle as we sow our seed to each other. The fourth soil, of course, is the good soil. When a crop yields a large harvest, what happens? The farmer makes more money and is able to buy more seed and prepare more soil. We can become overwhelmed by the amount of hard, rocky, and weed-infested soil that surrounds us. If we had to sow seeds by ourselves, it would be impossible. But the point is, we are not alone. The more seed planted in the good soil brings more seed to plant in the bad soil, and the harvest can continue. So you see, the point of this sermon is not how much harvest we receive, or even the importance of preparing the fields. Those things are important in a way, and they're good to do, but the point here is the sowing. The mistake we always make in evangelism is thinking we have to do it just right. And if we don't win somebody, we fail. The farmer in this parable wasn't doing it right, but he was doing it. God wants us to just sow the seeds. He will take care of the rest.